Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're diving into the world of plant-based eating today. So if you've been thinking about trying out some new recipes or even, making a bigger change in how you eat, well, you're in the right place.
Yeah, and to really get a good grasp on this, we're using the Trad Plant-Based Cookbook as our guide for today. It's kind of like this cookbook wants to be your guide to a whole world of plant-based possibilities. It's a lot more than just salads, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not just a bunch of recipes thrown in there.
Yeah.
This book actually gives you like a foundation. It starts with a mindset of plant-based eating and mindful eating, which is super important. And then it goes into these really fascinating techniques like sprouting, talks all about herbs and spices, and of course, plant-based proteins, which, is always a big question.
Right.
And then, yeah, it's packed with recipes, like tons of them, everything from soups to plant-based cheeses, even desserts. Plus, there's a recipe index at the back, which is always helpful if you're looking for something specific. That's super handy, yeah.
So in this deep dive, I guess our mission is to kind of extract the most useful, interesting insights from this cookbook. Hopefully, give everyone listening a bit of a head start on, understanding what really matters when it comes to plant-based eating. And of course, we want to spark some inspiration too, without, overwhelming you with too much information.
Right, absolutely.
So, ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So let's start with something that might sound a little, well, maybe a little different, and that's raw and living foods. So the cookbook introduces this concept of eating food raw, or at least not heating it above 42 degrees Celsius. I think that's about 107 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And then living foods takes it a step further by including raw foods that have been sprouted.
Yeah. So what's really fascinating here is how the book, it talks about, all these amazing health benefits you can get from eating this way. They say it's a path to like this high quality health, and that it can help with purifying your body, like detoxification, cleansing. And they attribute a lot of this to the high amount of fiber and what they call revitalized water that's present in these foods.
Yeah.
And then it even goes into this idea that positive interchanges, like from eating this way, can actually manifest outwardly. Like they're really connected.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And when they talk about living foods, like a key element is sprouts and microgreens, and they really emphasize how these little guys, grown from seeds and grains, are like fundamental to feeling fuller and having more vitality. It's like they're waking up the dormant potential in these seeds and grains through this simple process of soaking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Soaking, it kind of like it kickstarts the germination process, right?
Right, exactly.
Like when you soak grains or seeds in water, you're basically unlocking all this nutritional goodness. It starts to break down some of the more complex compounds, and then that makes the nutrients more available as the plant, starts to grow. It's a pretty simple step, but it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of a difference it makes.
Mm-hmm.
And the cookbook actually gives like a really clear DIY guide on how to sprout. So for anyone who's interested.
Nice.
Yeah, so they say first you want to pick out your seeds or grains, making sure they're not damaged or anything.
Okay.
And then you just put a small amount in a jar, cover them with water, and let them soak overnight.
Okay, so far so good.
Right. Super easy.
Mm.
So then the next day you drain that water,
Right.
and you cover the jar opening with something breathable, like muslin cloth or even a sieve, and then secure that and invert the jar so that any excess water can drain out.
Okay.
And it's good to give them like a good rinse under running water at this point too.
Okay, so kind of cleaning them off.
Yeah, exactly. And then the key is where you put the jar. So they say you want to put it like tilted in a drainer or a sieve, and then put that in a cool shaded spot.
Gotcha.
And then this is the important part. You want to rinse them every morning and evening. That keeps them moist and prevents any mold from growing as they sprout.
Consistency is key.
It is, yeah.
Oh.
And they give some great examples of what works well for sprouting, like alfalfa, fenugreek, sunflower seeds, mung beans, green lentils.
Yeah.
And they usually sprout within like 2 to 4 days.
Wow, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You can almost watch them, come alive.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, the book also talks about soaking grains beyond the point of sprouting.
Okay.
Like when you're preparing beans for cooking, for example, and this is something that a lot of cultures have done for for ages, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So is it just about softening them up for cooking, or is there more to it?
I think there's definitely more to it. The cookbook, it specifically mentions neutralizing phytic acid.
Okay.
Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, it's sometimes called an anti-nutrient, right?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, it can bind to certain minerals in your digestive system and potentially make it harder for your body to absorb them. So soaking, it helps to break down this phytic acid, and then that makes those minerals, more available for your body to use.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. And how long do you typically soak grains for that purpose?
The book generally recommends about 8 to 12 hours for most grains.
Okay.
Yeah, but they do give a more specific method if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so first, you want to rinse the grains under running water. Pretty basic. Then you put them in a container, cover them with plenty of water, and then here's a helpful tip from the book. Add a tablespoon of lemon juice per liter of water.
Okay.
And that acidity can help to further break down that phytic acid. Yeah, and then they also suggest changing the soaking water at least once during that 8 to 12-hour period.
Okay.
And then finally, before you cook the grains, you discard that soaking water and give them another good rinse.
So it's kind of a multi-step process, but it's not too complicated.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A little bit of forethought can go a long way.
It does. And
Yeah.
do different grains require different soaking times?
They do, yeah. The book gives some useful guidelines. So beans, they typically need that 8 to 12-hour soak. Chickpeas can take a bit longer, around 12 to 24 hours. And then lentils are quicker. They only need about 2 to 4 hours.
Okay.
And it's interesting to note that red lentils, they often don't need any soaking at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then even quinoa, which cooks relatively quickly, it can benefit from a shorter soak, like 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really all about, optimizing the nutritional value and making them easier to digest.
Gotcha. Okay, so moving on from these foundational techniques to something that really brings plant-based food to life, and that's seasonings.
Ooh, yes.
I love how the cookbook really emphasizes how herbs and spices are key to transforming even the simplest ingredients into something with incredible flavor, aroma, even color.
Absolutely.
And it all starts with two basics that are probably in almost everyone's kitchen already: onions and garlic.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with those.
No, you really can't. But what's really cool is how the book breaks down individual herbs and spices and gives you suggestions on how to use them.
Right, right.
So like take rosemary, for example. It's known for its really strong flavor, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they advise using it, carefully, especially with roasted vegetables like potatoes and onions, where its kind of resinous quality can really complement those earthy flavors. And it's also fantastic in pesto.
Oh, rosemary pesto is so good.
It is. And then you have bay leaf, which the book calls a staple for things like broths and sauces, because it can simmer for a long time without losing its properties. It just adds this subtle but complex depth.
Yeah, it's amazing how much flavor a bay leaf can add.
It really is. And then there's cilantro. Now, cilantro is another herb with a really distinct flavor. People either love it or hate it.
I know, right? It's so polarizing.
It really is. But the book highlights it as perfect for adding like a fresh, bright note to salads and as a finishing touch to a lot of dishes.
Yeah, that makes sense. It can really brighten things up.
You can. And then mint and peppermint, although they're from different plants, the book kind of groups them together because they have similar digestive benefits.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then marjoram and oregano are presented as pretty similar as well. They can really enhance the flavor of roasts and sauces and salads, whether you use them fresh or dried.
Yeah, I love using those in Italian dishes.
Oh yeah, me too. And then there's parsley, which with its kind of mild, fresh flavor, the book describes as a great all-rounder. Like it pairs well with pretty much anything. And the tip is to add it at the end of cooking to preserve its brightness.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah. And then thyme, with its thin, delicate stems, is surprisingly versatile.
Yeah.
You can use it in savory dishes, but also even in some desserts.
Really?
Yeah. And then sage, which is known for its strong, slightly peppery flavor, is excellent in sauces, especially with pasta.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the book mentions that dried sage can be used for its purifying aroma, like just to cleanse a space.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Basil, of course, is like a staple in Italian cuisine. Think pesto, tomato sauces, fresh summer
Yeah,
salads.
right.
And then finally, green onion and chives are presented as really versatile garnishes. And what's cool is that their flowers are also edible, and they add a subtle oniony flavor and a pop of color.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so then the book moves on to spices,
Yeah.
and it starts with pepper, and it's kind of interesting that it points out how white, black, and green pepper all come from the same plant. They're just harvested and processed differently,
Yeah.
and that's what gives them their slightly different nuances.
Okay.
And then there's pink pepper, which isn't actually a true pepper.
Really?
Yeah, it comes from a completely different tree, and it adds more in terms of fragrance and color.
Huh. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun fact. And then there's clove.
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes its very potent flavor.
Oh, yeah. Clove is strong.
It is, yeah. And it reminds us that it's a key ingredient in Indian curries, but it also finds its way into sweets.
Hmm.
And it can add a really exotic touch if you add a few cloves to onions or roasts or rice or even tomato sauce while they're cooking.
Okay, so it's more versatile than I thought.
It is, yeah. And then star anise gets a little bit of a word of caution because its flavor is quite strong. So the book recommends combining it with other spices to prevent it from, overpowering the dish.
That makes sense.
And then cinnamon, that wonderful aromatic bark, is highlighted for its versatility. You can use it in drinks. You can use it in all sorts of sweet and savory recipes.
Yeah, cinnamon is pretty amazing.
It is. And then nutmeg gets a mention for its ability to add like a subtle depth to creamy white sauces, mashed potatoes, pumpkin dishes, and usually just a pinch is enough.
Okay.
And then cumin, with its little pointed seeds and its distinctive warm aroma, is noted for pairing beautifully with beans, lentils, chickpeas, and hearty soups.
Oh, yeah, I love cumin.
Me too. And then we have turmeric and saffron, both of which are prized for their vibrant color and also their potential health benefits. Turmeric comes from the rhizome of the ginger family, and saffron comes from the delicate stigmas of the crocus flower. And they can be used in powdered form or fresh form to add both color and a unique brightness to dishes.
Yeah, they're both really beautiful.
There are, yeah. And then ginger, available in both powdered and fresh form, is highlighted for the kind of dynamic, slightly spicy touch that it brings to both savory dishes and sauces.
Oh, ginger is so good for you too.
It is, yeah. Cardamom, whether you use the whole aromatic pods or the ground spice, is a staple in Indian cuisine. It adds this complex and fragrant note. Paprika, made from ground bell peppers, is presented primarily as a coloring agent in sauces and soups.
Okay.
And it comes in sweet, spicy, and smoky varieties, which is cool.
I love smoked paprika.
Me too. It's so good. And then mustard seeds and fenugreek seeds are suggested for sautéing with vegetables or adding to hot oil to flavor rice.
Yeah.
It releases their distinctive aromas.
Yeah, I love that technique.
Me too. It's so simple but so effective. And then sesame seeds, beyond just being a pretty garnish, are the foundation for tahini sauce. And the book points out that black sesame seeds are particularly high in protein, calcium, and vitamin A.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, it is. And then here's an interesting one that's become pretty popular in plant-based cooking: nutritional yeast.
Oh, yeah.
So the book explains that it's produced by fermenting molasses or beets, and it's valued for its ability to boost immunity thanks to its B vitamins. But it also gives this surprisingly cheesy flavor to things like salads and pasta dishes and sauces.
Yeah, I love using nutritional yeast.
It's so good. The key is to not overheat it too much, though, because you don't want to lose those benefits.
Right.
And then the book also touches on pre-made spice blends like curry powder and garam masala, explaining that these are typically Indian mixes of dried spices. So then finally, the seasoning section wraps up with some really useful condiments.
Okay, let's hear it.
So we have mustard sauce, which is made from mustard seeds, vinegar, salt, citric acid. And that can be a great base for more complex sauces. And then soy sauce and tamari sauce, both salty with a hint of that umami flavor, are offered as substitutes for salt, especially in Asian-inspired dishes.
Yeah, I use those all the time.
And then miso paste, made from fermented soybeans, adds this complex, salty and slightly sweet flavor, which is great in soups and marinades.
Mm-hmm.
Balsamic vinegar, the Italian staple, provides this wonderful balance of sweetness and tanginess. Apple cider vinegar, with its sharp, tangy flavor from fermented apples, is recommended in its unfiltered form, which contains the mother.
Okay.
And last but not least, sesame paste, or tahini, made from crushed sesame seeds, often with garlic, warm water, and lemon juice, is highlighted as the classic accompaniment to falafel.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So it's quite a comprehensive look at how to really layer flavor into plant-based meals.
It is. And it's really inspiring. You know, it makes you want to go out and experiment with all these different flavors.
Yeah, totally. Now, a question that I know is always on people's minds when they think about plant-based eating is where do you get your protein?
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is, yeah. And the cookbook actually tackles this directly. You know, they lay out the key sources of vegetable protein.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they list beans, all kinds of beans, peas, fava beans, lentils, chickpeas, and of course soy in its various forms like tofu and tempeh as the primary building blocks of plant-based meals when it comes to protein. And then they introduce seitan, which might be less familiar to some people.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with seitan.
So they describe it as essentially wheat gluten. And it's kind of remarkable for its ability to mimic the texture and even the appearance of meat. And what's fascinating is that seitan has this long history as a meat alternative, dating back to like Buddhist monks in the 6th century.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and the cookbook really emphasizes just how versatile all of these vegetable proteins are. It highlights how they can be transformed into everything from hearty burgers to creamy pastes to rich sauces to comforting soups and stews to smooth purees, even impressive roasts.
Yeah, the possibilities are kind of endless.
They really are. So now to really see how all of these principles come together, the cookbook is packed with recipes. We obviously can't go through all of them, but let's touch on a few that really stood out and illustrate some of the techniques and ingredients that we've been discussing.
Yeah, let's do that.
So what culinary adventures does the book offer?
Well, let's start with a refreshing raw green soup that they call the Green Flow, and it sounds like a fantastic, quick and nutrient-dense option. You make it simply in a blender with ingredients like zucchini, spinach, garlic, onion, lemon juice, olive oil, basil. And then for creaminess, you can choose from soaked sunflower seeds, almond butter, or raw cashews. And then, just add water, salt, and pepper to taste. And the book does note that it's best consumed immediately to enjoy that freshness and vitality.
That makes sense for a raw soup, yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds really adaptable, too. Like the notes suggest that you could easily swap out the spinach for other leafy greens. You could use pumpkin seeds for a different nutty flavor or add a little miso paste if you wanted like a saltier umami note or even blend in some avocado for extra creaminess.
Right. There's so many possibilities.
There really are. Okay, so then there's a sprouted chickpea hummus.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And what's particularly interesting here is the emphasis on using sprouted chickpeas, which the book says makes it easier to digest and enhances its overall vitality. And the other key ingredients are tahini, olive oil, garlic, lemon juice, and then they add a lovely touch with cinnamon and nutmeg, along with the standard black pepper and salt. And the recipe also includes details on how to sprout the chickpeas yourself.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it explains that you need to soak them for a good 24 hours, making sure to change the water a couple of times. And then you drain them and place them in a sieve or a sprouting tray, cover them with a damp cloth, and rinse them every 8 to 12 hours until you see a small sprout emerge. And the serving suggestions are beautiful. They suggest garnishing it with whole chickpeas, a drizzle of olive oil, a sprinkle of paprika, and some fresh herbs.
That sounds so delicious.
Yeah, it does. Okay, moving on to something a bit different. There's a recipe for a crispy tofu with ginger and orange.
Oh, I love that combination.
Yeah, it sounds really good. So this features firm tofu that you press to remove excess liquid, which is a really important step for getting that crispy texture. And then it's coated in cornstarch and pan fried until it's golden brown. And the sauce sounds wonderfully bright and flavorful. It's made with orange juice, grated orange zest, brown sugar, soy sauce, fresh ginger, garlic, and a little bit of cornstarch to thicken it. And they'd suggest serving it with fluffy rice and some steamed broccoli.
That's a great complete meal.
It is, yeah. And then for those who are intrigued by seitan, there's a recipe for caramelized seitan.
Okay.
So this involves coating the seitan in cornstarch, frying it until it's nicely browned, and then tossing it in a really rich-sounding sauce made with soy sauce, brown sugar, water, more cornstarch for thickening, fresh ginger, garlic, and then a pinch of chili flakes for a little bit of a kick. And again, they suggest serving it with rice and some sautéed vegetables.
Okay, so it's kind of a similar concept to the tofu dish, but with seitan?
Yeah. Exactly. It really highlights the savory possibilities with seitan.
Right.
Now, for something completely different, a cashew mozzarella.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is a dairy-free cheese alternative made by soaking raw cashews until they're soft and then blending them with psyllium powder, water, lemon juice, and salt until it's completely smooth. Mm-hmm. And the psyllium powder acts as a binder and it helps to give it that mozzarella-like texture as it firms up in the refrigerator.
That's really interesting.
It is. And then there's a recipe for fresh nut cheese, which sounds even more versatile.
Okay.
It's made by soaking your choice of nuts or seeds. They suggest Brazil nuts, cashews, almonds, or sunflower seeds. And then you blend those with water, apple cider vinegar for tang, lemon juice for brightness, onion powder, garlic powder, and salt. And you could even add nutritional yeast for a more pronounced cheesy flavor and fresh or dried herbs for extra flavor. And the book mentions that it's fantastic for spreading on sandwiches and wraps, using as a dip or as a topping for other dishes. It's amazing what you can create from nuts and seeds.
It really is.
And then for a surprisingly delightful sweet treat, there's the Blondie chickpea brownie.
Now that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, so this uses cooked chickpeas as the main base, along with nut butter for richness, ground almonds for texture, a touch of agave or molasses for sweetness, tapioca starch to bind, vanilla for flavor, salt to balance, baking soda and apple cider vinegar for lift, baking powder, and coconut oil for moisture. And they even suggest serving it with a chocolate sauce.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
That's amazing.
It is. Speaking of which, the cookbook includes a really simple recipe for a rich chocolate sauce made with good quality dark chocolate, creamy coconut milk, and a touch of cornstarch to give it a nice glossy finish.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, for a refreshing beverage, there's a basil seed potion.
Okay.
So this is made by combining basil seeds with water, orange, or passion fruit juice for flavor, lemon juice for a bit of zing, agave syrup for sweetness, and dried hibiscus flowers for a beautiful color and a subtle tartness. And all of that is left to steep together in the refrigerator. And the book points out that basil seeds, much like chia seeds, swell up in liquid and create this unique and slightly gelatinous texture.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a really interesting and hydrating drink.
It does.
So this cookbook really seems to offer a wealth of creative ideas for exploring plant-based eating. And it's interesting that before you even get to all these recipes, the book actually makes a point of discussing mindful eating. It sounds like that philosophy really underpins their whole approach.
Yeah, that's really significant. It's great that they dedicate a whole section to mindful eating before diving into the recipes. And they lay out four key tips. The first is all about perception, taking a moment to pause before you start eating, taking a few breaths and really observing the food in front of you.
Right. And the second tip is to choose slowly and thoroughly.
Oh, yeah.
And the book reminds us that it takes around 20 minutes for our brain to register feelings of fullness. So by slowing down and chewing well, we're more likely to recognize when we've had enough and avoid overeating.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And the third mindful eating tip is to rest between bites. So the suggestion is to actually, put your cutlery down between each bite to help you focus on the taste and the texture of the food and to create like a natural pause in your eating.
Okay.
And this can help break that habit of eating too quickly and mindlessly. And then the final tip is to really engage your five senses while you're eating. So the book encourages you to pay attention to the sounds, notice the different colors and textures of the food, inhale the aroma, and truly savor each ingredient as it hits your tongue. It even suggests like moving the food around in your mouth to engage different taste buds and chewing on both sides to fully experience the moment, it seems like preparing And then savoring these plant-based recipes could be a really wonderful way to cultivate a more mindful approach to eating.
Absolutely, yeah. By bringing more awareness to our eating experience, we can not only, enjoy the food more, but also develop a better understanding of our body's hunger and fullness cues.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So as we come to the end of this deep dive into the Ian Drad plant-based cookbook, what would you say is the key takeaway for someone who's been listening?
Well, for me, the key takeaway is that this cookbook offers a really comprehensive and an inspiring entry point into the world of plant-based eating. It doesn't just give you recipes; it provides like a solid foundation in understanding the principles behind it, from the benefits of raw and living foods and the strategic use of seasonings to the wide variety of plant-based protein sources available. It really shows that plant-based cooking is about abundance and flavor, not restriction.
I definitely agree. And I think there were some really surprising and insightful moments for me, like learning about the specific benefits of sprouting and soaking grains, and just how versatile things like nuts and even chickpeas can be in creating everything from savory mains to sweet desserts and even cheese alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, the listener, I hope this has sparked some curiosity and maybe even inspired you to try something new. Perhaps, give sprouting a go, experiment with a new herb or spice, or try one of those surprisingly delicious plant-based alternatives that we talked about.
Definitely. And as a final thought to really chew on, how might incorporating even just a few of these plant-based principles and recipes into your life, whether it's being more mindful at meal times, or exploring the world of herbs and spices, or trying a plant-based version of a favorite dish, how could that potentially shift not just your diet, but also your overall connection to food, and maybe even your impact on the environment? It's certainly something worth considering. So thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see